know that, especially for the Sephardim, that from the time of the beginning of Elul, they say Selichot every single day until Yom Kippur. Now, we as Ashkenazim, we start saying from the Saturday night before Rosh Hashanah, especially if it has to be at least 3 or 4 days, and then we say also until Yom Kippur. And there is one pasuk, one phrase, that we say many, 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 many times. And that is one of the most famous phrases that we say, Shema kolenu, Hashem, listen to our voice, Hashem Elokeinu, God our God, Chuz v'rachem aleinu, have compassion on us, v'kabel v'rachamim uv'ratzon es tefilotenu. That Hashem, you should accept all our tefillot. So there was a very, very great person in America. His name was Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik. Now all the Soloveitchiks are brilliant. He had a brother, Rabbi Yosheber Soloveitchik, who was a great Rosh Hashiva, also in New York. And their grandfather was Rav Velvel Soloveitchik. Rav Velvel Soloveitchik was the Godel Hador, the great Torah giant in Eretz Yisrael. Rab Chaim Soloveitchik, even before that. So when you say the name Soloveitchik, you know you're talking about a genius. So when Rav Aaron was a little boy, 6 years old, he was standing next to his grandfather one day of Selichot. Now, Baruch Hashem, I have grandchildren. And many times, the grandchildren, they try to make an impression and show how good they are in front of the grandfather and the grandmother. So this little boy was standing next to his grandfather, Rab Elia Peruzhiner, and he was saying Selichot, but he was very bright. So even though he was only 6 years old, he knew the meaning of Shema Kolenu Hashem, listen to our voice. So he's a 6-year-old kid, right? Let's say, like, how old are you? How old is he? He's Shemona. So imagine a kid like him, right, coming up here, and he's saying Shema Kolenu Hashem. The kid, he's saying it so out loud, you know, so his grandpa should be impressed. And he's saying all the words of the Selichot, he's saying so strong. But then it came to one pasuk that we say in the Selichot, and that he didn't say so strong. What was that pasuk? The pasuk is, Al tashlichenu la'ei zikna. Do not throw us away to old age. When we don't have any strength anymore, Al tazvenu. Don't forget about us. So we say that we may be young today, but when we get older, you know, don't forget about us, even when we're weak and not strong. So that the little boy didn't say so powerful. So after the tefillah, the grandfather went over to the little boy and said, I saw that when it came to Shema Kolenu, you said strong. But when you said about Al Tashlichenu, don't throw us away to old age, you didn't say it so strong. Why not? He said, Zaidi, I'm a little boy. I'm not an old man. I don't have to pray for that right now. You know, maybe sometime, but now I don't have to pray for it. I'm young. So the grandfather said, oh, my child, let me explain to you. He said, there's a deeper meaning to that pasuk. The deeper meaning is that sometimes a young man or a young woman acts like an old person. What does that mean? They say, oh, I'm tired, let somebody else do it. I did it already, somebody else should do it. And you can have somebody who's in his 20s and 30s, and they get burned out. That's what it's called in America. They get burned out, they can't do it anymore. Let somebody else teach, let somebody else do all the wonderful things. I'm tired. So that's what we're saying. That even though we're young, Al Tashlichenu, don't send us away la'ei zikna, to the mindset of an old person. A person always has to be young. If you're able to walk and breathe and talk, then you have to do things energetically. Because that's what Hashem needs. Hashem needs energetic people that are going to accomplish. Not that somebody says, oh, I'm tired already, I did it 30, 40 years, let somebody else do it. Until a person is on his deathbed, as much as possible he has to be able to accomplish. That's what he told him. So I want to tell you something. I remember one time there was a convention, a big convention of 1,000 people for Agudat Yisrael. And a rabbi from London, Rabbi Chanoich Erendro, he came. And it was very, very late at night. It was after midnight by the time he got up to speak. And he spoke maybe 10 or 12 minutes. But in those 10 or 12 minutes, he said something that was so powerful that every time I see him in England, we always talk about what he said, because it's a machayev, it obligates every person. Listen to what he said. The pasuk tells us, Vahi kasher yolda Rochel es Yosef. When Rochel gave birth to Yosef, Yaakov says to Laban, oh, now I could go, now I could leave, now I can face the world. Elcha el Makom ola artzi. I could go to my place and to my land. So the Shem Shmuel, the Sachach Rebbe, asked the question, why all of a sudden when Yosef was born did Yaakov feel confident? He had other children that were tzaddikim. Yisachar, all the great Talmidei Chachamim came from the Shevet Yisachar. From Yehuda, all the Jewish kings come from Yehuda. From Levi came Kohanim, Leviim. So what's so special about Yosef? That as Yosef was born, now Yaakov says, okay, I can face the world. And the Shem Shmuel gives a great teretz. He says the answer is Yosef. What does Yosef mean? More. He said, when I have a child that always wants to go more, higher, 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 that's the child I can face the world with. Nobody should ever be satisfied with the status quo, where they are right now. Every day you want to go higher and higher and higher. That's the purpose of this convention. We all come together to strive. Many of us are wonderful people, but we want to be better. We want to be Yosef, higher and higher and higher. And that's what Yaakov said. Oh, now that I have a child that will never be satisfied with the status quo, always wants to do more and more and more. Oh, now I can face the world. And that's what we have to do. Every day when we wake up, we have to say, Hashem, thank you for where I reached till now. But I want to go higher. I want to go higher in Avat Hashem, in loving Hashem. I want to go higher in Avat Yisrael, loving Jews. Avat Torah, loving Torah. Avat Tefillah, loving prayer. Every day I want to go higher. And that's what a Jew is all about. Always making progress. Never going into the mindset of an old man. And when we see people that have this kind of energy, like Shlomo and all the rabbis that are sitting up here, that's the best example for all of us. Because really, they are brilliant, these people. And they can make a lot of money being doctors and lawyers and financial venture capitalists and all these things. But they want to do for Klal Yisrael. And that's what they do. They come every day with new ideas, higher and better. Yosef, to be higher. And that's exactly what a Jew is supposed to be all about. So I want to tell you something very interesting. I remember one time, I was in Antwerp in Belgium, and I met Rabbi Traeger. Rabbi Traeger is a big Talmid Chacham. He passed away already. He was a Rosh Yeshiva. And we were talking about zirizut, excitement, doing things with excitement. And he told me very interesting. He said, David HaMelech says a pasuk, Chashti v'loi hismamoti. I hastened, and I didn't delay lishmor mitzvosecha, to do your mitzvot. So Rabbi Traeger asked, if David HaMelech said, I hastened, I was quick, why does he have to say, I didn't delay? If you hastened, if you went quick, you didn't delay. He said, no. Because let's say sometimes you see somebody's running to go to the synagogue. You say, oh, he's a big tzaddik, he's running to the synagogue. He's not tzaddik, he woke up 20 minutes late. That's why he's running. Or you see somebody's running to work, right? He's got to sell that skateboard, right? The big champion is coming to the store. The guy's running. Oh, he wants to make a sale. He woke up 25 minutes late. That's why he's running, right? Please forgive me, right? Right? So the idea is, Chashti, David HaMelech says, I hastened, not because I was late. I didn't delay, but I was excited. So I once heard that a rabbi, the Baba Rebbe, said something so great. But you have to know this expression in the Torah. I hope you'll know it, and I'll explain it if not. He said, when the alarm goes off in the morning, that you should come on time to the synagogue, that's the kol Yaakov. That's the voice of Yaakov telling you to get up. But when you put your hand on the snooze alarm to sleep another 20 minutes, what is that? Yadayim Yadei Esav. That's the hands of Esav, right? You're going to sleep another 20 minutes. I see from the smiles that everybody knows what this means, right? So I don't know if the Rebbe said it, but it sure is cute. That you're dying, Kol Yaakov, and the snooze alarm is you're dying midday Esav. So I want to tell you a story. And this story is so meaningful to me, even though that some of it is going to be in Yiddish, and I know that you don't speak Yiddish, but I'm going to translate. But I want to tell you something that made an impression on me as a teenage boy, and I could never forget. When I was 17 years old, so every summer we went to a summer camp. Camps in America are fabulous. They have so many camps for boys and for girls, and the kids play activities. They go away for 4 to 8 weeks. It's wonderful. I was a counselor in camp many years. All my children went to camp. It's a fabulous, fabulous thing. Hopefully you can do it here in Sao Paulo one day, have sleepaway camps. The kids, they learn mitzvot, they learn Torah, they learn sports. It's fabulous. It's a great thing. And I loved camp. I lived the whole year for camp. Now, one day after Purim, which is a few months before the summer, my father says to me, he says, this year you're not going to camp. I couldn't believe it. Like, what happened? He lost money, he doesn't have money to go to camp. We're like, why, Pa? I love camp, it's the best. No, you're going to do something better. I said, what's better than camp? Camp is the best. It's Olam Haba. He said, no, I'm sending you to Israel. Now, this was in 1964. Before the 6-Day War. We didn't have the Kotel, we didn't have the old city at that time. I said, why are you sending me to Israel? He said, because there's going to be a big convention of Agudat Yisrael. And all the rabbis from all the world are going to come. And you're an energetic person. I want you to go. You're going to go with your tape recorder. Now, of course, today you don't even know what a tape recorder is. You know? A tape recorder, it's not even like a cassette. It was before cassettes. It was like a big boom box. And, you know, you had the reel-to-reel. And he said, you're going to listen, and you record all the speeches. And I'm sending you for 2 months. 2 months, right? I was never away from my parents for a week, except for camp. And now he's sending me for 2 months. He said, you're going to go visit the rabbis, and you'll take pictures of them. And you're a nice guy. You're going to ask all the rabbis the same question. It doesn't make a difference. And each one will give you an answer. You record it. It'll be so special. Okay, fine. Now, in 1964, there was no cell phones. In 1964, there was no telephones in Israel. Most people didn't have telephones. So, I couldn't call my father or my mother. And I used to write letters every day, and they wrote me letters. I saved the letters for many, many years. And one day, near the end of the trip, my father writes me this letter. He says like this. You know, I heard that there's a man who goes around singing 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. It's dark, but he sings a song to wake up the people for Salichot. They should get up for Salichot early in the morning. Could you go and record it? And I'm thinking, what am I, crazy? 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to record, and my father doesn't even know who the guy is or where he is. So I answered every letter except that one. I may believe I didn't get it. Fine. A couple days later, I get another letter from my father. He says, you know, I wrote your letter, maybe the mail's not so good. Maybe you could find this guy who wakes up people for Salichot. It would be so special if you would get that recorded for me. Okay, he's my father. He asked me twice. He paid for my ticket. Okay. So I was afraid to go alone. So I got a friend of mine that I met in Israel. I said, listen, my father told me that there's maybe somebody who wakes up people for Salichot. So maybe you could come with me. I'm afraid to go 3, 4 o'clock in the morning at night in the area, near the Bukharian area, near the Mandelbaum Gate, where the old city, we didn't have the old city yet, but where the Mir Yeshua is today. So would you come with me? He said, okay, good, I'll come. So I go with my boombox, you know, with the tape recorder, and we're trying to hear, you know, if somebody's singing a song, you know, at night the voice carries. And then all of a sudden I hear, in the distance, some man is saying, Shtei Tori Fasliches, get up Fasliches, get up Fasliches, Shtei Tori Fasliches. So I was thinking, that's what my father wants me to record, I can do that. What was it what it was. Right? So now, imagine this, 2 big guys, right? And this little man who's singing that, he never sees anybody in the street 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, right? He's walking along the houses and he's waking up people. All of a sudden in the distance, he sees 2 guys running towards him. He got so scared. He said, "Oh, what's in there? Like, what do you want from me? What do you want? Are you okay?" I said, "Don't worry, we're Americans." That's the answer why we're so crazy. We're Americans, don't worry. We're safe. I told him in Yiddish, I said, "Listen, I want to show you this thing. I don't know if you know, he was so old. I thought he was like Avraham Avinu. I said, I don't know if you know what this is. This is a tape recorder. I said, let me explain to you that if you say something in it, then you press a button and you can hear it again. Like, I didn't know if he knows what a tape recorder is." So he said, "So what's you like, what do you want from me?" I said, "My father told me that there's somebody who wakes up people for slichas, and he sings a beautiful song. Are you the one who does that? I would like to record it." He looks me up and down. He says, "Yeah, that's me." I said, "Oh, please, I'm going back in 3 days. I'm going back to America. 3 days, could you please sing it for me?" He says, "Okay." Now, I'm so embarrassed to do this for you, but I'm going to sing it anyway. And I'm going to show you what this guy was singing 3 o'clock in the morning in the dark. And it was in Yiddish and in Hebrew, and I'm going to translate at the end the whole thing. And he clears his voice and he goes like this. Yisrael am kodesh steht oif la'avodas avoidei rotz katzvi v'gibor koari la'sois v'tzoin avicho shebashamayim Yisrael am kodesh steht oif la'avodas avoidei. Then he says to me, "Okay?" Oh, is that okay? Yisrael am Kodesh. Yisrael, the holy nation. Shtei toif, wake up, la'avodas avoidei, to serve your Creator. Rotz katzvi, run like a deer. Gibor koari, be strong like a lion. Lasos, ritzoin avicha shebashamayim, to do the will of your Father in heaven. Oh, I'm telling you, my father listened to that without exaggeration 100 times. That was the greatest gift I could ever give him. And as a matter of fact, I live in Queens, and I used to go to school in Brooklyn. So every morning, my mother had to wake me up early. So normally she would put on music because we had a big house, 10 rooms, and so she had like an intercom from the 1st floor to the 3rd floor, or 2nd floor, with all my brothers and sisters where we slept. So every morning she woke us up with music. Now she had that every morning. Every morning she woke me up. That was my alarm. And then when Rabbi Shalom Shmadron, the Maggid of Yerushalayim, came that year in '65, the first time he stayed at my house for 6 months. It's a whole story. It's not for now. It's in the first Maggid book. So one night we're sitting at the table, and my father says to Rabbi Shmadron, the Maggid of Yerushalayim, he says, "Rabbi Shalom, I want to bring you back to Yerushalayim." He says to my father, "Rabbi, what are you talking about?" He says, "Listen." And he presses this, and the guy is singing, "Yisrael am Kodesh." All of a sudden, Rabbi Shalom starts crying, and the tears are coming down his cheeks, and he's listening to the whole thing. And then he says, "Oy vey vey, I remember I was a little boy, and he was a young man when I was a little boy. He used to sing it every morning in Elul. I used to listen to it as a little boy, and then I wrapped my blanket around myself and I went back to sleep." He said that was the memory that I had of this person waking up everybody for Salichot. And that's what Yiddishkeit is all about. That's what Elul, we were in Elul. We get up early. Rotz katzvi, that's in Pirkei Ola, Perikei, you can look it up. Rotz katzvi, run like a deer. Gibor koari, be strong like a lion. To do the will of your Father in heaven. In the Torah, it says like this. In the Torah, there's no mikudot. Yesterday, the guys who laned, right? You were the Balkurder, right? Who was the one who laned yesterday? They did terrific. Rabbi Weinfeld, you laned, right? Somebody, who was the one who laned? Whoever it was. They have to read it. There's no mikudot, there's no vowels, right? Okay, whoever it was. Both guys did a great job. Okay? Now, so what happens was like this. Many times the Gemara will tell us, in the Torah it says this word. But really you could read it 2 ways. For example, It says, let me see if anybody can figure this out. It says, Ushemaraten, you should watch Es HaMatzot. Matzot is the matzah. You got to do it fast, right? You got to make the matzah within 18 minutes, otherwise it becomes chametz. But you could read that word matzot in a different way. How could you read it? Mitzvot, right? So Rashi tells us, Ushemaraten Es HaMitzvot. Just like you got to do the matzahs quickly. So when it comes to doing a mitzvah, you got to do it quickly. You got to do it with excitement. So I'll tell you a story. You won't believe this. I know I'm on CD, whatever. But okay. So listen to this. A guy calls me for a bris. So I said, okay, good. What synagogue do you want to do the bris? He said, no, we can't do it in my synagogue. I said, why not? He said, I'm embarrassed for my family to come to my synagogue. I said, how could you be embarrassed that your family should come to your synagogue? He says, I'll tell you the truth, Rabbi, we got the matzah minyan. I said, the matzah minyan? What does that mean? He said, we finish in less than 18 minutes. You're supposed to make the matzahs in less than 18 minutes. They daven so fast, they call it the matzah minyan. And we didn't have it this day, he was embarrassed. And he's right, you should be embarrassed. Anybody who davens in 18 minutes should be embarrassed. So, but what is excitement? Excitement means that you want to do it right, you want to do it properly, but you do it with enthusiasm. So what is the lesson that we have to take from this Shabbat? One of the lessons is not only to do things with excitement, but to know that every mitzvah and every word of Torah is so important. So I want to tell you another story. Yeah, in case you noticed, I like to tell stories. So what happened was that one year I was going to lead a trip to Italy. And they asked me to take about 60, 70 people to Italy and to talk about the Jews when they were very strong in Italy. Now today there's some communities, but not like it used to be. So I did a lot of research. I always do a lot of research before I go someplace. And I was seeing which great rabbis lived in Italy. So perhaps the most famous was the Mesilat Yesharim, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. He lived in Padua, in Venice, in those areas. And he wrote that great book, Mesilat Yesharim, The Path of the Just, The Path of the Righteous. And it's a wonderful, wonderful book. And everybody, if you could get it, I'm sure it's translated in Portuguese, it's translated in many, many languages. And the Vilna Gaon once said in the first 7 or 8 chapters, there's not one extra word. It's very, very good. So he was there, the Sforno was there. The Sforno was one of the people who wrote a commentary on Chumash. The Bartanura was there. The Bartanura, he lived in Italy. He wrote a commentary on the Mishnayos. Today we have a Bartanura wine, right? So I'll tell you a story. It has nothing to do with the speech, but I'll tell you a story anyway. I like to tell stories. So I remember when I didn't see the wine called Rashi wine. I was so angry when they put Rashi's name on the wine. It was like Moshe Rabbeinu wine, if you want to sell small saffron wine, okay, fine, right? Portuguese wine. But Rashi, how do you put wine on Rashi? In the name of Rashi. Okay, so they said because Rashi had a vineyard and he used to grow grapes. Okay, after 2-3 years, fine. I started drinking Rashi wine. It was okay, it's good wine. But the advertisement for the Rashi wine was the best I ever saw. Even though I didn't drink it in the beginning, I had to admit, well, you're the one who does the public relations, right? So you know a good line. You're going to appreciate this. Listen to this. Yeah, I know my customers. So they said like this: our wine is Rashi. All the rest is commentary. You have to hand it to them. Great line. Even though I was so angry. But anyway, so what happened was, so the Bartanura also came. But there's one thing that bothered me very much. If you go in Italy, in Rome, it's different than every city in the world. Every city, Sao Paulo, Miami, and Zurich, in Amsterdam, Los Angeles, New York, they want to show you how modern they are. In Rome, it's just the opposite. They want to show you how ancient they are, how old they are. And they have many buildings, and it's called the Roman ruins. The ruins, they're thousands of years old. Buildings, half of buildings. And pillars no buildings, staircases, no rooms. All kinds of buildings, Roman ruins. And they want to show you how ancient the city is. But there's one thing that's perfect. And it hurt me so much. Why did Hashem leave this thing? It's so perfect. It should have been broken also. What was that? That's the Arch of Titus, the Arch of Titus. And it's 51 feet high. Titus was an Asher, a terrible person. He was the one who took the Jews out of Yerushalayim by the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. He helped destroy the second Beis HaMikdash. And there's a big arch, it's beautiful, very tall. And then there's a sculpture, an engraving. And it shows soldiers. Some say it's Jewish people, some say it's the Goyish soldiers. They're carrying something. Does anybody know what they're carrying? You ever see it? The menorah. Go online, you see Arch of Titus, you'll see they're carrying the menorah. They're taking it out of the Beis HaMikdash. And I was so upset. Why did Hashem allow it? It's so embarrassing to the Jews. Million people come every year to Rome for tourists. They all stand, they take the picture. The Goyim, or even the Jews having to take the menorah out of the Beis HaMikdash. It's so embarrassing. Why did Hashem leave it that way? And the more I was thinking, why did Hashem? And then I tell you, I heard a story, amazing story. That there was a fellow, he was a correspondent, a writer, he was a writer. And he was writing about Hadrian's Wall. Hadrian in the Gemara was Had Rayonos. Had Rayonos, he was the one who killed Rabbi Akiva. Now, near Gateshead, in Newcastle, in England, there's a big, long wall, 70 miles long. It's called Hadrian's Wall. And the Romans built it because that was the top northern part of the Roman Empire. And they didn't want anybody, the barbarians, should come in to destroy the Roman Empire. And this guy was writing a report about it. And he saw that today the wall is not chashuv anymore. People take off bricks. It's nothing, nobody writes about it, nobody talks about it. So when he was reporting, he was a Jewish guy, he was not religious, he didn't know anything about Judaism. Somebody was talking to him, he said, you Jewish? I said, yeah. He said, you know, there's a very religious neighborhood just a few miles from here. Would you like to see it? He said, yeah, a religious neighborhood, that would be nice. So they took him to Gateshead. Gateshead is a small community. It has many yeshivot, many girls' schools, many seminaries. And the Rosh Yeshiva at that time was a big tzaddik, Rav Leib Gurowitz. That was his name. He was the Rosh Yeshiva of Gateshead. And this person took this Jewish correspondent, he took him into the house of Rabbi Gurowitz. And he tells Rabbi Gurowitz, this is a man, he's Jewish, but he doesn't know much about Judaism. And I wanted to bring him here to Gateshead, he should see the Jewish neighborhood. So Rabbi Gurowitz said, why did you come here? He said, I'm reporting on Hadrian's Wall. Now, this man, he didn't know that Hadrian killed Rabbi Akiva, but Rabbi Gurowitz did. And he saw this guy knows very little about Judaism. He said, come here, I want to show you something. And he takes him down the block, and he takes him to a Beit Midrash. There's 200 guys in the Beit Midrash. And this guy never was in a Beit Midrash before. He walks inside. He sees big books, little books, on the shelves, off the shelves, yelling, screaming, asking questions back and forth. He said, Rabbi, how can you think here? He said, you know what these guys are talking about? Rabbi Gurowitz said, you came to talk about Hadrian's Wall. Nobody cares about the wall anymore. Nobody's talking about Hadrian. Hadrian killed Rabbi Akiva. These guys are talking about Rabbi Akiva. They're still trying to figure out all these years later what Rabbi Akiva meant. And not only that, this is called a Beit Midrash, a place of study. There are 100 places like this around the world, and they're still talking about Rabbi Akiva. Hadrian doesn't live, but Rabbi Akiva still lives in the minds of all these Talmudic students. And then the fellow came back, he couldn't believe it. He had never seen anything like this. And Matis Yosef Solomon, the Mashgiach of Lakewood, he told me he remembered the day that Rav Gurowitz brought this fellow in. They gave him the kippah and somebody said a kaddish with him. But then I understood. Then I understood why Hashem wanted the Arch of Titus to still be there. You know why? Because that's a message not to the Goyim, to us. See, they're carrying the menorah. The menorah is the pasuk, Ki ner mitzvah v'torah. Every mitzvah is like a candle. It's like a candle. What's the biggest light? That's Torah. And when we left Yerushalayim, we carried this menorah to show this is the beginning of the journey. This is the beginning of the trip. Where's the end of the trip? When Mashiach comes. How are we going to make it if we carry that menorah? Every one of us has to have ner mitzvah. Every mitzvah that we do, every bracha that we make, every time we put on tzitzit, every time we say Asher Yotza, every time we bench Birchat HaMazon, every time we learn anything, that's the mitzvah. And if we learn Torah, oh, that's the biggest light. That's what Makom is all about. That's what the 3 places of Makom are all about. Not only the mitzvot, but the Torah. That's the real light of Klal Yisrael. And this tzaddik was telling me that he wants to learn Hebrew. Why? Because when you learn Hebrew, you know the source. Of course, he's right. We were talking, this tzaddik over there had a great chumash. He lent it to me yesterday. Translated in Portuguese. That's great. But when you read it in the Hebrew, you're going to see things that the translator didn't even see. Because each one in our mind, we can make up new things. When you think about it, Hashem puts something in your head. Just like last time we spoke about the eclipse. Nobody said that. But when you think, Hashem, help me think of something, you're going to see something in the Torah that nobody saw before. And that's the beauty of the Torah. It's always new, it's always fresh. It's like the sun that we spoke about. And that's the message. So I'll tell you something that a great rabbi once said. He said in generations of the past, they were called mitzvah Jews. What does that mean? That there were some communities that they didn't study Torah, but they did mitzvot. Everybody ate kosher. Fine, that was beautiful. He said, and then there were other communities, everybody kept Shabbat. So they were mitzvah Jews. They kept Shabbat in one generation, they kept Shabbat in another place. They did kashrut, they did all these things. But all those generations, they died out. And ended up intermarrying, like unfortunately in America and here in Brazil so many times. But when they learn Torah, oh, that's when they give it over. Why? Because a mitzvah, as great as a mitzvah is, it's only a ner, it's only a candle. If we put a candle right now here and the windows are closed, the candle's going to roll. But when the ruach comes, the wind comes, it's going to blow it out. But what happens if you have a big fire and the wind comes like you had last night, right? You had a big fire and the wind comes, it makes the fire bigger. So now in the world we have the ruach, we have winds of immorality, we have winds of secularism and winds of materialism. And if a person doesn't have Torah, he only has the mitzvot, that ruach is going to break and put out that ner. It's going to flush out that ner. It's going to put out the candle. But when you have the Torah, you learn Chumash, you learn Gemara, you learn Halacha, you learn Musar. Oh, and you see those winds, it makes you stronger. It makes you stronger, and then you're going to fight it, and you fight it strong. But that's only the Torah. And that's the purpose of this holy convention that we have. To strengthen ourselves. Everyone, every cost to do mitzvot. But we have to be Yosef. I spoke to some of the people here this Shabbat. They told me they come once in a while. Once a week they come to Makom. It's not enough. We got to make a Kabbalah. We're going to do more. We're going to come twice a week. Or 3 times a week to Makom. I'm going to come in the Hebraic Center. I'm going to come in the, what? Geronymous?
Yeah,
Giannopoulos, right? Whatever. And the Bohitil, right? Oh, Moema. Okay, whatever. You know. Okay. But that's what we got to do. We got to come more. This tzaddiket over there, who was involved in the Good Shabbos project. That's beautiful. What a holy project. You have to talk about it all over the whole world. So that the kids should know what Shabbat is all about. So if they do it once a month, we got to do it twice a month. We got to get all the kids, everybody involved to see the beauty of Shabbat. The reason kids are not religious is not because they don't like it, they don't understand it. If they would understand the beauty, how many kids, if they could have been at this Shabbat, would love this Shabbat? was so exciting, was so beautiful. The food and the ambiance and the speeches and the singing and the prayers and the friendship. I never saw so many touchy-feely people in my life. Everybody's holding on to each other. It's amazing. I got to learn that in America, the warmth of everybody. It's amazing. That's beautiful. And when you have that warmth, then you can translate that warmth to Hashem. And one of the things that we have to do is have respect. We have to love each other. We have to care about each other. Somebody told me last night, it's amazing. I spoke in the condominiums. So one boy came from America, and he's now in Rabbi Friedman's yeshiva in Sao Paulo. He said the people here are so special. He said, I didn't speak Portuguese. But I came the first day in the school, everybody came over to me. Some guys knew a little bit of English, but they tried to make me feel comfortable. He said eventually I learned Portuguese. His mother was born here in Brazil, so he knew some basic things. And he said, today I'm learning beautifully. Because the Portuguese people, the Brazilians, the Sao Paulos, they made me feel special. And that's what Abbas Israel is all about. So I want to tell you a great story. You know I like to tell stories. You know something? You know where I heard the story? Right here. Right here in Sao Paulo. And I printed it in my latest book. You should all buy 3 copies. Yeah. Now, listen to this. Last 2 years ago, 2015, right? So Shlomo was kind enough to invite me to the dinner. It was the 10th anniversary of Makom. And then, after the dinner, a guy comes over to me, Charles Abalafia. Charles comes over to me and he says, Rabbi, I got a great story for you. Every day people tell me that. I have a great story. He says, Rabbi, you're going to love this. Every day people tell me that. Okay, but he was right. He told me a great story. It's on page 50 in this book. And, you know, I just gave it to Shlomo and I told him, please give another one to Charles. You won't believe this story. Charles Abalafia, when he was a young man, he wasn't religious. Then he started becoming more and more religious. He got to know Shlomo. He came to Makom. And he became more interested in Judaism. And then what happened was that his parents, they were not religious. Excuse me, I just have to shut the phone. Sorry. He became more religious. And his parents had a place. It took me 2 weeks to learn how to pronounce this place, but I think I got to stay Guaraja, right? I said Guaraja. No, I got to learn Abakichi. Where are we? Where? Atibaia. After Guaraja, now I got to learn Atibaia. Can't get something simple like Brooklyn. So his parents, they have a home in Guaraja, right? It's a beautiful place. So they said, could you come to Shabbat? Because we have a synagogue, we know you like to go pray. So come to us and you'll be able to pray in the synagogue. Now, you know better than me that the road going down to Guaraja can be very dangerous. There's a lot of favelas, right? I said that good, favelas, right? I learned it, okay? So there are a lot of favelas and you don't want to get stuck there, right? Because that'll be the last supper, you'll be finished, okay? Okay, and so what happened was, he makes sure that he's got a lot of gas, you know, he's got enough at 75 miles down to Guaraja. He's 20 miles outside of Guaraja, on that long road, and all of a sudden he gets a flat tire. And he can't fix the flat, he doesn't know how to fix it, he calls his father. You know, you can't teach somebody over the phone how to fix a flat tire, right? And for whatever reason, his father couldn't come, he's going crazy, because if he gets out of the car, he's going to get shot. Right? Somebody will rob it, you know, the bandits. So whatever happens on the highways, you know, and going down to Guaraja. So he has no choice, and he gets into the car, and he's going to drive to the first favela. He comes in, the cats and dogs and the little kids, you know, so filthy. And the guy comes over to me, you know, no shirt. So I said, what are you doing here? And of course they speak in Portuguese. He said, you know, I'm stuck, I got a flat tire. Is anybody going to fix it? And they look at it, they can't fix it. And he sees a car, he told me it's 30 years old car. He says, whose car is that? So the guy without the shirt said, that's my car. He said, listen to me, sir. I'm going to leave you my car till Sunday. I trust you. But please take me in your car. I got to get to Guaraja before the sun goes down, before sunset. So he says, I'll pay you anything. And he makes a deal with him. And he leaves his car, gives the guy the keys, and they get in the car. Okay? The guy wanted to put on his shirt. He said, no, we have no time. We got to go right away. and they're flying down the highway. Then he decides, he's got to tell the guy why he's in such a rush. He says to him, "What's your name?" He says in Portuguese. The driver says Charles. He couldn't believe it because Charles is not a common name in Brazil. And now he's Charles and he's Charles. So he says, "I'll tell you the truth," he said. Charles Abelard, he says, "I don't know if you ever saw a Jew in your life, but I'm Jewish. And we believe that God created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. So by Friday night, I cannot be in a car. I cannot carry my wallet. I cannot answer a telephone. So I got to get to Watertown before sunset." So the guy, Charles, the driver, looks at him and says, "You don't think I know what a Jew is? I'm not Jewish, but my mother's Jewish." Whoa. He said, "What? What do you mean your mother's Jewish? And you're not Jewish?" So listen what he says. He says, "I'll tell you what happened." He says, "My mother was born in Holland in the end of the 1930s. And my grandparents, they saw that the Germans were coming. They knew it was very bad for Jews in Holland. So they got on a boat, and they got on a boat that went to Santos in Brazil. Many of you know the port city in Santos. And it took a long time. Many people ran away. My grandparents were from the last ones. My mother was a little girl, 8 years old. They were from the last ones that were able to get out. And then when they came to Santos, it was a Christian city. My grandparents didn't want anything about Judaism. So they took my mother, they put her in a Christian school, and she was raised as a Christian. She married a Christian man, and I have a whole bunch of brothers and sisters. We're all Christian. My mother's Jewish." Now he didn't want to tell them that he's really Jewish, because he thought he'd throw him out of the car. So he said to him, "Wow, your mother's Jewish. Is she still alive?" He said, "Yeah." "So where is she?" She said, "She's in a hospital in Santos. She's dying. She's very sick." So what would we say? Think about this for a second. What would you say if this guy, Charles the driver, just told you that? You know what Charles Abelard the Tzaddik said? He said, "Can I go visit her?" Charles looks at him. "You want to visit my mother? You don't even know her." He said, "No, but if she's Jewish, and I'm Jewish, Jewish people stick together. I would go. It's a mitzvah to go visit somebody that's sick." He said, "I can't believe it." She said, she's in a terrible hospital. It's a filthy place. But she's on the 4th floor, the 3rd bed in room 10. He said, "I'm going to go there Sunday morning before I come back to your place." And he came here a few minutes before Shabbat. And Charles is such a holy Jew. He told me, "I felt so bad that the guy's driving back, because now I know he's Jewish and he's driving on Shabbat. But I didn't want to tell him anything. What am I going to tell him? He's not staying in Guadalajara." Fine. Sunday morning, he comes into the hospital, goes on the 3rd floor, room 10, whatever, bed 4. He says, "Is your name Maria?" She looks up. "Who are you?" She says, "You don't know me, but your son is a wonderful person. He brought me here on Friday. He did me a big favor. Your son is Charles, right? Just like my name." She said, "Yeah, you're right." And they get into a whole conversation. And then, once he felt comfortable, he said, "Maria, you're Jewish, right?" She looks up. "How do you know that?" He said, "Your son Charles told me, because I'm Jewish." She said, "He told you I'm Jewish?" He said, "Yeah, is it true?" She said, "Yeah, it's true." He said, "Maria, do you remember anything from when you were Jewish?" She closed her eyes. And she says, "I remember on my abuelo, my grandmother used to light the candles with me Friday night. And then in perfect Hebrew, she says, 'Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu,'" and she starts crying, and she can't stop crying. She's crying and crying. She can't get out the words, "Lahadv'ner shel Shabbat." And she's crying and crying, because she's reliving the Judaism that she loved as a child, and her parents took it away from her. And finally she says, "Lahadv'ner shel Shabbat." And he says, "Maria, you said that perfect. How did you do it? How do you remember that?" She said, "You think I don't love God? I always loved God. I never believed anything told me in that Catholic school. But my parents forced me. They forced me to go to that school. And then I grew up and I married somebody. But I know what the real thing is. I know Judaism is the real thing. Charles is amazed. He says, I want to be your friend. Please, give me your address. I promise you. I'm going to come visit you. I'm going to come visit you after you get out of the hospital. And sure enough, he went back, he got his car, and a few weeks later he went to visit her in one of the favelas. I wrote down where she lived in Mawa, M-A-U-A, how do you pronounce it? Mawa. You know where that is? Any place. Okay. So that's where she lived. And he had the address, and he sees there's a big cross on the door. Now she said that she loved Judaism. How could she have a cross on the door? He walks in, some of her kids are there, so he didn't want to say anything. And then finally, when the kids left, he goes in, Maria, he said, I'm so happy to see you. But you told me you love Judaism. How come you got a cross on your door? She says, you think I want it? I hate it. My kids put it there. He says, you want me to break it? You want me to take it away? She says, oh, I wish you would take it away. And he's so holy, you know what he told me? You wouldn't believe. He told me he took the cross and he put it in the trunk of his car and he broke it. And he said, I tell you the truth, every day when I say Aleinu, I think about this, what he told me. He said, you take to break Avodah Zarah. When do we ever get a chance to break Avodah Zarah? I get the chills when I tell it to you. He said, I broke that cross and I felt I was getting rid of Avodah Zarah. And he went inside and he said to her, you know, let's remain friends. And you know something? He never saw her again because she died shortly afterwards. And when I told my rabbi, Rabbi David Cohen, the story, he said, well, look at the mitzvah. You do one mitzvah. You did a mitzvah, big cholim, that's what Charles did. And he brought this lady back to Shuvah. She was saying the bracha. Who knows, he said. Maybe before she died, quietly, she said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Because surely as a little child she said that. And if she could remember the Haggadah Ner Shel Shabbat, which she said only once a week, she surely remembered Shema Yisrael, which she probably said every night. And that's the beauty of Ahavat Yisrael. When you have Ahavat Yisrael and you are so sincere, you don't have to tell anybody to be religious. Just the fact that you're religious and the fact that you love Yiddishkeit, that makes other people want to do it. Because they want to be like you. And that's the purpose, again, of this convention. To show love to each other. And to go back with a new determination. That every cousin that we have, every sibling that we have, every friend that we have, we're going to tell them how great Makom is. Not because we want to tell them about the food and the friendship, but we want them to feel a meaningful life. How many people told me this Shabbat that they came back to Tshuva because this is the life. This is really what life is all about. When you feel a connection, you feel you have a higher purpose in life. I just was in Ukraine, I told you. So there's a man, Rabbi Shalom Arush, big tzaddik, he wrote a book on Emunah, on faith. And he spoke to us in Uman, in Shalosh Shudas. Today, if you would see him, a long beard, big peyot, and Hasidic garb, he said, I'm about Tshuva. You couldn't believe it. The guy looks like he's religious for 500 years. He said, he used to have hair down till here, to his waist. He said, he was a medic in the Israeli army, the helicopter unit. And he had everything that any guy could want, he had. He was 23, he had the whole world open for him. He said, and then one day there was a helicopter crash in Israel. And so many of his friends died in that helicopter crash. He told me he came to the funeral and he was thinking, that's it? That's it? A person lives until either he dies or gets killed? That's it? There's got to be more. And he said that funeral changed him because it showed how short life could be. And it showed that if you live without meaning, every second you're dying, every second you're getting closer to death. But when you have a purpose, when every second you're getting higher and closer to Hashem, that's what life is all about. That's how we changed. And that's the purpose of coming here, to think about it, to think of the beauty that we had this Shabbat, and to take it with us. I want to tell you one more story. Just one, no, later, but I want to tell you two more. Okay? I'll just tell you an amazing thing. How you can believe in miracles. And that when you're close to Hashem, you never know, anything can happen, anything. There's a woman, her name is Lori Martin. Very wealthy woman. Her and her husband, they give a lot of tzedakah. They live in the 5 towns, it's called, in Woodbury, in Long Island, in New York. And in New York, there are many, many great tzaddikim that are buried in one particular cemetery. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky is buried there, Rav Pam is buried there. As you learn more about Yiddishkeit, you're going to learn about these great rabbis. Rabbi Yaakov Yosef. And then there's also Rabbi Henoch Leibowitz, who is the Rosh Yeshiva of the Chofetz Chaim Yeshiva. So many times I take people in their little up times. We go to these cemeteries to pray a little bit at each place, and I tell them the stories of each great rabbi. So Lori Martin had a daughter, has a daughter, and she was in Miami. She's the mother of 2 children. She's walking in the street. This is about 8 months ago. No, it's more, a year and a half already. And all of a sudden she falls. She just faints. She told the husband, I don't feel well. And she fainted. And she went into such a deep coma from that fainting that when Hatzalah took her to the hospital, they were afraid to take an MRI. They were afraid to take a CAT scan because if they move her, she could die. So she was in that coma in the hospital in Miami, and they called her brothers and sisters, they called her mother, and the father said, calm down and say goodbye to her. She won't understand that her brain is not working anymore. Just come and say goodbye. She's not going to live much longer. And everybody came down and they were crying, saying goodbye, and they didn't even know if she understood or anything. After a few weeks, she became not conscious. She was still in the coma, but she became a little bit more stable. They were able to take a CAT scan and an MRI, and they put her in an ambulance, and they put her on a plane, and they brought her to New York. And now she was in a hospital called Long Island Jewish Hospital. Now, Lori Martin is a tzaddik. She's a great person. In her house, they have what's called the Amen group. Every day, many women come together. Each one says the brachot. In the morning, everybody says Amen. Then they pray. And then they come together. Then they say Tehillim. And somebody says a Dvar Torah. Every day they do this. On Rosh Chodesh, they bring in a speaker. So she has the Amen group. Now, so the women from that group said, Rabbi Kron, could you please take us to the rabbis? And we all want to pray for Lori's daughter, because she's in a coma, and now it's already almost 2 months. And they say she's brain dead. So please, is there any way that you could take us? I said, okay, I'll take you on a certain day. We made up on a certain Thursday. And I said to them, it's supposed to be very, very hot. Now, normally in the cemetery, you're not allowed to eat, but I want everybody to bring water. Bring water, and I'm telling you, you could drink. You must drink, otherwise you could get dehydrated. A person, chas v'shalom, could faint from the heat. You know, it's the hot sun. And we all go, I give them a whole introduction about what it means to pray by a tzaddik. And we go from one rabbi to the other rabbi. And then we go to Rabbi Henoch Leibowitz, who never had any children, but he had many, many, many talmidim in the Yeshiva Chofetz Chaim. And I told them all that every time I was a mohel in that yeshiva, I did a bris, right? And he was the sandak, that means he held the baby on his lap. He always would tell the father, I give you a blessing that your son should be a marbitz Torah. He should be one that teaches Torah. And today, there's so many guys from Chofetz Chaim. They opened up schools all over the United States. In Miami, in Las Vegas, in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, in Brooklyn, in so many places, St. Louis. It's amazing, Milwaukee. They're tremendous guys from the Chofetz Chaim Yeshiva. And we're standing there and we're praying. And we're praying in that sense that I told you yesterday, Gam ki ela v'gates amavas, even though that I am in the valley of death, but either or not, I'm not going to fear, because you are with me. All of a sudden, everybody hears a scream, a big scream. Everybody's terrified. And somebody's yelling, I thought, my first thought was somebody dehydrated, fell and hit their head against the stone. And they're bleeding or whatever. I said, get Hatzalah. And somebody said, she's on the phone. She's on the phone. And I'm thinking, who's on the phone? Somebody's calling Hatzalah. And they said, no, go to Lori. Her daughter's on the She came out of the coma. She said, yeah, right now. Talk to her. Raquel, I said, Raquel, is that you? She said, yeah. I said, how are you feeling? She said, fine, Baruch Hashem. I said, what? I can't believe it. I can't believe it. She was just in a coma. And while we were praying, she got out of the coma. And all the women, they're crying, they're hugging me, kissing. Not me, I'm just and they're screaming like they can't. It's unbelievable. And one lady said, we gotta say Nishmas. If you say Nishmas on Shabbat, you see at the Seder of Pesach, that's such a beautiful prayer. And they're all crying and saying Nishmas Hashem, you saved us. And at a time when nobody thought that she would be. And the next day, of course, I went to visit her. And I was talking to her. At that time, it was still the election of Trump and Clinton. We made a joke and she was laughing. And she made a little joke. And her mother started crying. I said, why are you crying? She just made a joke. Listen to what the mother said. She said, when you understand a joke, that means your brain is working. Very interesting insight. You cannot understand the joke unless your brain is working. If my daughter made a joke, that means her brain is working. Yesterday, her brain was not working. She still needs a refuah shlema. She should have a refuah shlema. But I want to tell you, when we were standing by the last rabbi, somebody said to me, they said, Rabbi Cohen, you got to explain this. How did this happen? We don't want to leave here. We feel that we're part of a miracle. How did this happen? And I told them like this. I said there are 3 words in the Hebrew language that all begin with the same letters. Nun Samach. Nun Samach has 3 meanings. Nun Samach means Nes, a miracle. Nun Samach, Nes is a banner, a flag on a high banner. And Nun Samach is the beginning of the word Nisayon. Nisayon is a test. And I said to everyone, why did Hashem give Abraham Avinu so many tests? He loved him. Why did he test him? You know why? Because he knew he would pass. And when somebody passes a test, then they go on a higher Ramah. That's what Hashem did. He gave Abraham Avinu 10 tests so he should go higher and higher. I said, ladies, all of you today had a test. You came on the hottest day of the year. You didn't come to pray for your son or your daughter. Not for your grandson or your granddaughter. You came to pray for somebody else's child. So you passed that test. You came on such a hot day. Oh, then you were put up on a banner very high. Oh, and then the 3rd test. Then the miracle happens. From Nisayon to Nes, oh, the miracle could happen. And that's what we have to understand. And that's how we have to know how God deals with us. Many times we go through difficult situations. And we figure, how are we going to get out of this? It's impossible. It's only a test. Hashem wants to see how you're going to relate to me. Are you going to be angry at me? Or are you going to say, God, I trust in you. You're going to get me out of this. And I'm praying to you, and I love you, and I know you're going to help me. And then all of a sudden, Hashem sees you still with him. Oh, then you're on the high banner. Once you're on the high banner, the miracle happens and the luggage comes. Which it came 1 o'clock in the morning. We have one more speech, Bezrat Hashem, at the lunch. But what we learned from today's talk is that we have to have zirizut. We have to have excitement for Yiddishkeit. Rodz katzvim, run like a deer. Gibor karvim, be strong like a lion. We have to remember that we're all carrying that menorah. The ner mitzvah, every mitzvah is a candle, but it's only a candle. The study of Torah, that's a big or. That's the light. That's the thing that we can give on to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And finally, when we have Avat Yisrael, like Charles Amalafia, who grew up right here in this town, who grew up and became special because of Makom, just like all of you. Like he did, that's how he brought that lady back to Tshuva, not because he told her to do Tshuva, because he was such a kind, loving person that that woman, Maria, was inspired to say that bracha. And maybe she said Shema Yisrael. Finally, let's remember, anything can happen. When you have trust and faith in Hashem, we can go from the test to the banner to the miracle. Miracles should happen to all of us. We should have a great year and a wonderful year. And we should see the greatest miracle of all, which is the coming of Mashiach. So that next year, the Makom convention is going to be in the Binyanei Omah, Yerushalayim, and Mashiach will be the main speaker. I'll be saying.